And especially right now, as we talk about freedom and talking about fighting for freedom, one of the core beliefs that we have as a nation is that we're free to worship or not to worship, how we see fit. And so that is what we're there to help. And we're part of that chain. Like I said, it's not the chaplain making decisions, but because we do represent religious ideas and because we, by our very nature, understand faith backgrounds, we're a big part of that pie. But there are others that would be involved in that process as well.
Break down your typical, let's say your typical weekend, for instance, on the weekends of the month you're there, or the 2 weeks, I think you said, or maybe it was less than that, over the course of the year. Just break down what you typically do.
A typical day.
A typical day? Absolutely.
Well, as with anything, some of it's meetings, catching up where everybody's been, what everybody's got plans to do, and then we tend to handle a lot of services. For example, retirements. People would like to have invocations for those, promotion ceremonies, induction ceremonies. We provide counseling, spiritual direction. People come and seek us out just like they would a clergy on the outside. All of us have master's level degrees, and like I said, are endorsed by the church.
Right.
And so we do come with those experiences and expertise as well. Visitation, getting out to where the troops are and visiting. And a lot of reserve bases have actual church services on Sunday. We, because we're so tied with the 437th, the active duty wing there at Charleston, the active duty side handles the services, and we tend to do thoughts for the day, meditations, because on the larger scale, you're also at a time crunch. We're trying to do a whole lot in 2 days, 2 8-hour days, and you can only put so much in such little time.
Sure, great point. If a viewer had a potential interest, whether in active duty or in reservist, in getting active, if they've got some religious involved or have been even active in the ministry, and think that maybe this role in serving the military, whether it's in the Air Force, for instance, could they go online to learn more about chaplaincy, possibly in the Air Force, and find maybe some good phone numbers or other?
They could. The chaplain service website is www.usafhc.af.mil.
Okay.
And right there at the bottom is the link to all the, there's a background instructions about what chaplains do, what chaplain assistants do.
Great.
And there's also numbers because they would have to get in contact with a chaplain recruiter. And that has a link to all of our chaplain recruiters that they could talk specifically chaplain information.
And give me that URL again real quick, Father Danford.
www.
Right.
.usafhc. .af.mil.
.af.mil. So that would surely be for the Air Force there.
Yes.
www.usafhc.af.mil. Okay, very important for viewers who may have an interest there, and to learn, of course, if they wanted to get in the, I'm sure whoever they contact could let them know if they weren't interested in the Air Force, looking in the Army or otherwise.
Well, all the service websites would have a link, so you could probably go to Army or to Navy, and you could see a link to their chaplain corps.
Great.
Get in touch with them as well.
Very important. As viewers think about that, they're trying to think, let's say can you project or give a sense to viewers if you were active and were overseas, let's say, what a typical activity if it wasn't just the 8 hours, and how about that just the 2 days there, if you were in the full-fledged and were away. I think I saw there were some times 180 days there at Charleston Air Force Base, or even your time at Maxwell Air Force Base, where you were very active. And surely, when you think about your days as a chaplain there, where it's, do each of the denominations have to have representation in the chaplaincy, or?
It would be nice, but we do not feel based on what would be called a quota, because however, we do look at the religious breakdown of the services and understand that, it would be nice if we had this many, but we can't draft. We can only recruit and ask.
Right.
And so it's really up to the denominations to send us people. For example, There's been a push right now because we're losing a lot of our Roman Catholic priests, and we really need those. And the services have started a push to try to recruit as many Roman Catholic priests as we can, and they're working, and it is working, and we're bringing a lot, because a lot of people just don't, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and you think that they're always going to be there. And some people may have the inkling of, hey, I would like to serve our men and women in uniform.
Absolutely.
And never follow through. But we do need them. You know, we can always, if anybody is interested, to make the call.
And you're a priest in the Anglican Catholic Church.
Yes, sir.
The reason I ask that aspect, of course, if you think if someone growing up in a Baptist home, and I think you possibly even in that home, and then going to divinity school and in a Methodist divinity school, and obviously now being a priest in the Anglican Catholic Church, you cross denominations with Christ still as a central point, but not necessarily getting Christ-based into your, I mean, it's service to God. How does Christ come into the picture there? Can you talk about that? How Christ's role there?
Because, you know, all of us in the chaplaincy that are Christian wear the cross, and so it's the understanding of the reason we do wear the cross. And part of my service has to do with what I feel our Lord commanded us to be disciples and to be witnesses and to go where the people are. You know, I know a lot of people who are prison chaplains, a lot of people who are hospital chaplains, serving outside of what we consider the local parish or the local church. I believe those are the things that God has gifted us with, and the different ways that God has, you know, called us into ministry. Mine happens to be the men and women in uniform. So while we are limited on how, I guess, a good way to say it, of how evangelistic we can be in a setting, you know, one-on-one, or when people ask us, we are still free to be ministers. And so if people ask me questions, I'm free to answer those. We just do not stand up, you know, to say the Air Force makes you believe this, because the Air Force doesn't. It's when people come to us on a one-on-one basis.
Excellent. So there is a need to recruit more, whether it's priests, Catholic priests, into the military. It seems like there was a piece in Newsweek magazine not too long ago highlighting, or a national magazine highlighting, a true need there, which is part of the reason, the opportunity to get you in, to show that folks can still maintain active lives both in and out of the military, and the reservists. Now, of course, you could be called, or could you be called, I'm sorry, to active. How does that work in the reserves? We got about 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, when I was at Maxwell Air Force Base, I was activated when our unit was called up there. And it's the presidential call-up. When the president, you know, and Congress and the way that works realizes that they need more than the active duty can supply to meet a need, they will then start looking at the reserves, and it's either on a volunteer basis or an activation basis. Volunteer basis tends to be for short term, where when we need people for long term, we activate because of employers and, you know, the needs of that. And so the call comes down, and, you know, you've been activated. And so then you go. At Maxwell, I was activated specifically for home station support, which was to take care of the families and to be there for the troops when they were going, or the airmen when they were going to and from the war zone. And so we saw them off. We gave all the briefings. We told them what we offered, because the reserves also, there is a local community, but there's not. For example, Charleston Air Force Base, we pull in reservists from 5 states. And so when we have families that are there, you know, we're covering that wide range. And so it's more than just dealing with the greater Charleston area. For example, we're talking to people. And there's another aspect of that, our family support office. We worked hand in hand in making sure that not only the person who is deployed is taken care of, but the families that are left back are taken care of as well.
Very important point. Absolutely. It seems like the reservists are almost, I mean, that's a real potentially difficult position to be put in if you're called to active duty and have your home church, for instance, for a chaplain there, the chaplaincy aspect there, where you are a priest in the Anglican Catholic Church and the PD. Of course, you could be called to active duty there in Charleston, and it would be very difficult there. and your family even, of course,
yes,
your wife and kids.
The church understands, and the church works with that. And one of the things I would like to mention, we were talking about the religious freedom and talking about what we're free to do when we hold services as well. Because one of the things we do, at a deployed location is we would have Sunday services, Bible studies. In those situations, we are free, as you were talking about, where does Christ fit in,
right,
or where does your particular faith background. We're free to be who we are in those settings as well.
Very nice.
It's only when the individuals are forced to be there, like at a mandatory meeting, that we cannot be evangelistic.
Right.
But in the other meetings, we are just as you would view a preacher or a rabbi or an imam or a priest.
Great words, Father Danford. Your own children thinking about possibly a military service, or even thinking of the chaplaincy?
Well, my they're 2 and 4.
Oh, yeah,
so
not yet.
Not yet. However, my youngest loves airplanes. So
that's great.
Maybe one day.
That's great. That's a great commitment. Of course, Pete Sealer, who does a column for the Herald, our own air column, and said not only is there a need to look at chaplaincy in all the services, but of course, particularly priest, the Catholic faith, there's a real need there, and surely all denominations need a great representation there in the services. We're thankful that Pete opened that door, and thanks for coming up. No, that's a lot of traveling for you to get here. I'm sorry we've run out of time, but we'll surely get you down another time.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Chaplain, with Father Jamie Danford, coming up next. I think if we could all get a job description like that, 6 words, a 6-word job description. It's a great highlight. Glorifying God, honoring airmen, serving all. Glorifying God, honoring airmen, serving all. A 6-word job description. If any of us could get an opportunity to have a 6-word job description, but it's that core aspect of servant leadership, glorifying God, honoring airmen, and serving all. Not just a few, but all. And of course, Father Jamie Danford's in that situation as a chaplain, as a father, in his role even as a priest in the Anglican Church. He's serving all and making a difference in so many. You can make a difference. You can make a difference by opening the door for someone else to look at chaplaincy, whether it's in the Air Force, in the Army, in the Navy. The opportunities are out there. Go online, at least in the Air Force side, to www.usafhc.af.mil. Go online. It's a great opportunity. usafhc.af.mil. You can make a difference by getting involved or opening the door for someone else to get involved in the chaplaincy service of the U.S. Air Force. Go online.